Metrorail train commuters are worried that they may not be able to afford train fares. That's with the expected steep hikes set to start on the 1st of August. Now, this follows the announcement by the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA, that commuters will have to pay over 100 Rand more for monthly tickets and more than 2 Rand for a single trip ticket. Unions such as GIUSA and COSATU have slammed the proposed fare hikes, saying that PRASA and Metrorail are making public train services increasingly inaccessible to struggling South Africans, particularly the working class. Now, Mametlwe Sebei is the president of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, GIUSA. He joins us now live. A very good evening to you, Mr. Sebei. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the late edition.
Pleasure to be here. It's me.
First of all, what have your members and the broader working class community expressed to you about how these steep fare increases will affect their daily lives and financial stability?
I mean, it is a question of a shock and anger, and obviously, an utter disgust and outrage at these exorbitant increases of, Metrorail fares that amount to no more than extortion of, the working class people who are desperate for, affordable public transport and are completely reliant and dependent on PRASA to provide that transport and have no any other viable option to be able to reach their workplaces, for their children to go to school, but also just to be able to access, public and commercial, public service and commercial centers in major urban centers. And I think this would make their life very hard. Just to look at the numbers that are involved. I mean, the increases, for daily fare is between 33 to 43%, right? For weekly fare is between, 14, is about 14 to 25, rand on weekly basis. And as you correctly pointed out, on monthly basis, some of the increases are over 100 rand. And for working people already battling a cost of living crisis, this will be another crushing blow in the situation.
But then PRASA has justified the fare hikes as quite necessary to maintain and improve services, quite frankly. But from GIUSA's perspective, do you believe commuters are currently receiving value for money on Metrorail services? Or if I were to ask this question differently, how does this fare sort of increase or intersect with the broader cost of living crisis currently faced by workers in South Africa?
I mean, let's understand what it means, right? So, firstly, it is not in isolation. This increase are taking place in a context of soaring food and fuel prices, in a context of, skyrocketing cost of energy, and I think including increases in electricity and ESCOM, tariffs. Just about everything is becoming more and more unaffordable for the working class, including public services like rendering of water, which has been increasing at rates more than even those of electricity and other public services, whose first we debate now and then. So, and when you look at transport in particular, right, the research shows that for workers on minimum wages and people in formal settlement, they already spend between 35% and 40% of their income on transport, right? So when you increase this by this margin, so this will be 43% increase on a 40% of the amount that is already being spent on transportation. So you have got to contextualize that. And alongside electricity, transport consumes about 7.7% of the working class family income. And that is the reason that when you take that together and these increases, what is being offered as choices for the working class is a choice between whether are they going to go to work or feed their family. Are they going to be able to be paying, for a child school transport, or actually, clothing, feeding them, and all of those kind of choices that are difficult. And you are talking in a situation where great majority of workers are on minimum wages, many workers are unemployed, with unemployment standing at over 43% if you include discouraged workers.
Mr. Sebei, you've made you've made a very interesting point earlier. You've made a very interesting point earlier when you said that the working class spend about 35% of their income on mobility or public transport, as it were. But in practical terms, do you foresee this fare hike leading to job losses or absenteeism, given that some workers may no longer afford commuting costs?
Absolutely. I mean, I know of a worker who, is a friend of mine that just told me about 3 months ago that they got a job. When I had this conversation with him about a week, I was shocked because he left the job, and the real reason he left the job is because he says it doesn't make sense because a lot of his income is actually spent on transportation.
Yes.
And let's understand, these are people who are saying, and this is what he said to me, right? That I would rather be home hustling to see how I at least feed my children by other means. Because already from this transport alone, I'm actually taking a lot of money that is meant for the food for my children. And this is not just his story, it is also the story of many people. In fact, it is estimated that a vast majority of working class people are underspending by 42% on food. That is the reason we have starvation, we have hunger, and of course we have malnutrition that is stunting, growth of young children in this country.
Now, Giwusa has slammed the increases as making trains inaccessible to the working class, obviously. But what specific demands are you putting forward to PRASA and the Department of Transport to address this crisis?
Firstly, they've got to withdraw this increase. We've got to be absolutely clear about it.
Right.
And I think we cannot have a situation wherein the very victims of the special planning of apartheid that has condemned working class people to be staying away and very far away from the workplaces, from the urban centers, from the schools, public services, all of that, to be the one paying for the legacy of that apartheid that is being perpetuated by the failure of this government. We are also saying that public transport must be a right because it has to do with the very functioning of the economy. It's about delivery of workers to work. It's about delivery of children to schools and all the things that make society to be able to run in a modern society, so to speak. So it has to be a right. But more than that, right, the commitment here must be that we are moving towards a public transport as an alternative to the crisis of climate change that we are facing, but also the chaos in the roads, the deadly oil pollution, the accident and everything that you see that is undermining, the productivity also in the economy. Because people are spending hours stuck in traffic. So in many countries, people are moving towards a free public transport. Why? Because it's the necessity. It's the only way that you're going to have economy being productive. It's the only way that you're going to reduce congestions, accidents, but also to combat, a climate change crisis. So we also need to say, how did we get to this crisis? The unbundling of South African, railway and harbour that would have allowed, if it had not been done, that a cross-subsidization of the commuter transport by a rail freight transport that would have allowed this entity, before unbundling, to actually tax big corporations, that are transporting, their merchandise and so on, and use that capital to actually fund affordable, accessible, efficient, and reliable public and metro rail commuter transportation. That's what we need to be able to go to.
All right, Mr. Sebei, unfortunately, we're out of time. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but you're quite right there. Public transport is a catalyst for economic growth in South Africa. But thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your time with us. Well, that was Mametlwe Sebei. He's the president of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Giwusa, talking to us about the announcement by the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa that commuters will have to pay over 100 Rand more for monthly tickets and more than 2 Rand for a single trip ticket. Now, this certainly will open up pockets of conversations about South Africa's public policy transport and its commitment to accessible, affordable mobility for the working class.